You're listening to the Beyond Nurse Residency podcast, an educational series where we interview experts on all topics related to the transition of new graduate nurses into practice and beyond. I'm your host, Nicole Weathers, director of the Iowa Online Nurse Residency Program. Thanks for joining us. Let's jump in. This year, I've been on a bit of a quest, having conversations with people who are experts in different components of engagement. We've explored infrastructure, culture, competency, and safety, and I've increasingly come to believe that belonging and connectedness are the next essential piece of the puzzle. Nursing is known for many things, but I think some of the most powerful are caring, compassion, connection. Most nurses are instinctively wired to show these things to our patients, yet we don't often talk about how caring, compassionate relationships with our teams actually shape how we feel at work, how engaged we are, and ultimately whether we choose to stay in this profession. So that's what we're exploring in this month's episode. Belonging, social connectedness, what it is, why they matter, how they impact transition to practice, and the practical strategies nurse leaders and nursing professional development practitioners can use to intentionally build greater belonging at work. And to do this, I have with me a very special guest, Dr. Frangieh. Welcome, Dr. Frangieh. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure to be here with you, Nicole. Thank you for having me.
Why don't we start off by having you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. And I'll be very brief, so I'll save the time for our conversation. My name is Jihane Frangieh, assistant professor and the director of the MSN Healthcare Organization Leadership Programs at Johns Hopkins School of Nursing. I have over 20 years of nursing experience with a clinical background in NICU. And my work really focuses on nursing leadership, healthy work environment, workforce development, and also like strengthening academic practice partnerships, online nursing education. I'm really passionate about building meaningful collaborations and mentoring future nurse leaders. This is me briefly.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like we have a lot in common as far as some of our interest areas. So it makes sense that as I was digging into this topic, I came across a paper that you had written on fostering belonging and social connectedness in nursing. And I think what really stood out to me in this article is that you didn't just focus on one group like students or new graduates, but instead you really looked at belonging sort of across that nursing career continuum. So I think maybe to start us off, I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of the story behind the paper. What was really the impetus of this work? What made you want to explore belonging and social connectedness in nursing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so this is not only my work. I have amazing colleagues who worked with me on this paper, and we were able to bring the perspective of every aspect of nursing, from students to like clinical nurses to faculty nurses. And it really started by one simple question, right? So we wanted to look at what makes nurses feel they belong. And we had this conversation, and we wanted to move beyond the statistics of burnout. We do have lots of evidence supporting like the impact of burnout on and the nursing profession, on the workplace environment, on the patient. But we started the conversation to talk about an inverse, right, of like a loneliness and like what can be a solution for burnout. And we came across like a connection, and not as a soft skill, but really as a structural and leadership priority. And we did like some a review of the literature, and the data really, honestly, it stunned us. We saw that loneliness rates among healthcare workers is really high. And it's not only in the US, this is from international also literature. It ranges from 10% in Italy to 90% in Bangladesh. And it's not just an emotional issue. So loneliness, it's really a predictor of burnout, of turnover, of poorer mental health. And in nursing, it impacts and erodes teamwork, trust, motivation. It also increases burnout. But what really pushed us to write this paper is some observations we found around us, right? So when colleagues at the bedside in academia or in leadership, they started naming loneliness and the feeling of they don't belong, it was almost always came before their decision to leave the organization. We also came across the work that the US Surgeon General and his team did in 2023 when they declared loneliness as a public health epidemic. And if you go to their website and if you read this report, you will be really stunned by the evidence we have. And even AACN named belonging as a priority for nurses. So this is why we thought, okay, let's get together. Let's see the other side, right? Like not only focusing on burnout, but on the solution, which is we propose social connectedness and belonging. And because this is something we also observe, and I'm sure you have observed at work that when you belong, like people will stay, right? Like when that people will be motivated to stay and to work with you. So this is why we wanted to look at those concepts and how it is embodied in nursing.
I really like that you took what I'm going to call a strengths-based approach. So looking at turnover, looking at burnout, a lot of research out there on that, but kind of flipping that script and instead of just talking more about that, talking about, okay, and what are the positive things that we can do to kind of help solve this. So I've definitely noticed and have read about loneliness being this epidemic in the US. And I think it makes sense that if this is happening at like a public health level, this is most definitely happening inside of our organization. So again, just found this article to be very, it piqued my interest and wanted to have, just a little bit more conversation here. So I always like to start kind of our podcast and making sure we're all on the same level as far as what it is that we're talking about. So maybe you could next kind of distinguish the difference between loneliness, social connectedness, and belonging. How would you explain those concepts in sort of basic terms for us?
Yeah, in the paper, we describe this based on the science, right? And we go and look at some deep definition of those concepts because we built our framework and work on these three interrelated concepts. So, in plain language, loneliness is the subjective perception of being disconnected even if you are surrounded by people, right? You can be on a busy unit and you can still feel completely alone, right? It's okay to feel sometimes lonely, but when it becomes a habit and a pattern, then this is loneliness and it can have an impact on your health.
And I think with loneliness, I mean, I think that's something that can be a little bit confusing sometimes because, we think, you're on a busy unit, you have all these colleagues, these coworkers, people from different departments that you're interacting with each and every day. How can you possibly be lonely?
Right. But you are lonely. Like you feel like you don't have this, which is next step, the social connectedness with the people around you. Right. And we propose that social connectedness is the inverse of loneliness as a concept. And the nice thing about social connectedness, it's a complex concept, right? But it has many dimensions, such as the structure, which is the size and type of your network, like how many people you have around you, who do you have around you, like the function, which is the reliability of the people around you, and then the quality of the interactions, right? Is it like positive or negative? And you can think about it as it's about who we can go to how often we can interact with them, and how safe we feel doing that. So I feel like those are the three elements of social connectedness. And belonging is the deepest layer there. It's that sense of affiliation and inclusion where we feel valued and integrated into a larger purpose. And this is like belonging at work, right? One of the lines in this paper that I really favor is, as social beings, humans inherently thrive on connection and interaction. So it's like something, it refrains belonging as a biological and professional need, right? It's not only a luxury. As a human, really, we do thrive by being together, by connecting and interacting with other people.
I think those definitions are really important to understand. I like, again, sort of loneliness, and then on the other side of that, that social connectedness with the inverse of loneliness. And then I think really talking to about belonging as that biological need. I think a lot of times when we talk about different strategies and things in the workplace, a lot of it can feel like these extra things that we're having to do, or, kind of going kind of out of our way to do different things. And I think kind of bringing this back to, it really is the biological need of the human to have these types of relationships and this type of connection.
Yeah, and we all saw during COVID how the isolation had a huge impact on all of us, right? This deprivation of social connectedness had a huge impact on everyone's mental health, physical health, and how you show up to others. So it is real.
Well, and I think, sometimes I always think about COVID as, one of those terrible things that happened, but it did come and shine a light on a lot of challenges and issues that existed before. We just weren't paying as much of attention, I think, to it. Yeah, I definitely think it came and kind of shined a light on how important this is, like I said, within our public health and our communities, but also in our organizations.
Yeah, I agree. Like it magnified what was already there. It magnified it. And like it gave us opportunity to think, right, about it and to value those concepts.
So, in your view, what does belonging at work actually feel like for a nurse?
One important condition is when nurses feel safe to ask a question. So when they are in a room with other people, with leaders, they are not worried to ask like dumb questions, right? And that matters because belonging is what creates this psychological safety. A nurse will who belongs will ask questions that can prevent errors. And a nurse who feels alone will hide the question. When you truly belong at work, you are included in opportunities where you can really grow, right? You are not overlooked, you are not passed over, you are invited to be part of committees, part of the solution, part of the mentorship. Um, your contributions are known and your name is known. This really sounds basic, but in my previous work, I interviewed a nurse about her nurse manager. And what she said, she told me, my nurse manager doesn't even know my name. And that's why I'm planning to leave. Being known really matters. Specific recognition matters. So not generic praise. And also in my work, when I was looking at social support, like nurses and nurse leaders told me they want like individualized recognition, individualized, sincere thank you. Yes, like nurses should see that their contributions are known. This is a type of belonging. Another thing is when you feel you are anchored. within your team. Even on hard days, right? You know that if things go sideways, someone has your back. We as nurses, we never work alone. We always work within a group. So this is a very important um, condition to feel belonging at work. The other thing is feeling that you are integrated. And by this, I mean that you are not just tolerated, you are integrated. You are not just in the room, you feel that the room is yours too, right? It feels like you are part of something bigger than yourself, part of the organization mission, of the purpose, part of a bigger purpose. This is when people feel they belong. And when we as nurses, we feel we belong.
Do you think there's anything too about kind of the sense of belonging within a team when people know and show interest in you outside of what you're doing professionally?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like this is how you build those quality connections with people. It's not just like this superficial knowing, it's trying to know people, who they really are, what matters to them. Um, and we all come from somewhere. We all have our own luggage with a different context. And this is important to share with others to be able to find this like the common things between people. So yeah, I agree. This is very important.
Because I do personally sort of see that within our teams as well, kind of knowing a little bit more about that individual. So yes, knowing their name, like you gave in that example, but also knowing, who they really are. Do they have, kids or a significant other? What do they like to do on their time off? Just kind of showing a little bit of interest in somebody outside of the immediate need that you have with them in the professional workplace, I think really goes a long ways for developing that social connectedness and eventually then that sense of belonging.
Yeah, totally agree. This is very important. And to make time for this to happen.
So you looked at sort of this continuum from student to clinical nurse, nurse leader, academic, faculty member. From your perspective, were there particular times in a nurse's career where they felt especially vulnerable to loneliness or feeling disconnected?
In every transition, right? Like in every transition, like you feel like this disconnection, right? Transition, let's say transition from being a nurse student to being like a grad nurse. This transition, it's like very vulnerable time in the nurse life. And this is when belonging is hard to implement, right? You have to be more intentional about this. This is where also retention is won or lost during this transition. Also, like let's say moving from being a clinical faculty, a clinical nurse to a faculty, this is also a time where you can suddenly feel lonely because like in clinical practice, you work more in a group. In academia, it's more individual work. So some people, they really lose this belonging and they can be prone to feeling lonely. Also like a shift from like being a staff nurse or a faculty to a leadership position, right? Because leadership can also feel lonely. Leaders, like they have staff concerns, they have organizational demands, they worry about patient outcomes, student outcomes. It depends on the context, but they don't always have peers to process this with. And we know that even like evidence shows that like nurses are being promoted just based on their clinical expertise and not leadership skills. And suddenly they find themselves in this position where they are leaders and they feel lonely. Another thing that I noticed is like maybe during online and hybrid programs like hybrid or online nurses, they are more prone to feel lonely because you need to be intentional in reaching out to people. Usually when you are on site, like you meet them in the hallway, going to the restroom, in the kitchen, and you have this connection and conversation, and you share like a picture of your kids or something. But online program, it's like hard, but there are ways to do it, but you have to put more effort into this. So I feel like in those like the transition usually, and like some contextual places, it's hard, or more hard to build like belonging.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think, big, obviously, reason why nurse residency programs exist for new graduate nurses, while we're seeing a lot more sort of fellowship for different specialties and some of those transitions. We're seeing a lot of those sort of fellowships pop up as well. Yes, there's a competency component to it, but I think also sort of this social connection and belonging piece that's really important with these types of programs.
Because like really like in those programs, this is where you help students to ask questions, to get feedback, to feel confident, right? To feel confident to ask those questions, seek mentorship, be part of a group, and have those connections.
So, I mean, that kind of goes to what my next question was going to be about: how does the sense of belonging really shape competence or that willingness to ask for help?
Yeah, it can impact the confidence, right? The lack of belonging, it can impact the confidence of a new grad, because remember we said it creates this psychological safety, right? And if it's not there, then students will hesitate to ask questions. And when they do this, then they will make more errors, or they will hide their errors. So it will have an impact on patient outcome as well. Because as I said, like students, they grow in this safe environment. And we all know that the data shows that up to 30% of new graduate nurses, they leave within their first year, and more than half within 2 years. So this transition year matters, especially for like those new grad people. And I feel like a new grad with strong technical skills and no belonging is a flight risk, right? But a new grad with developing skills, but strong belonging, will grow into excellence because they will reach out, they will ask those questions. And they will be also at ease to debrief after like a stressful event as well.
Yeah, I almost think, and it sounds like you are kind of agree with this, that belonging is almost more important than hiring a nurse that has the excellent skills sort of coming out of nursing. Those are things I think that we can work on, we can develop them. But without that connection to the organization, without that sense of belonging, um, like you said, they're a flight risk. We need to give them a reason to stay.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
So you talked a little bit about inclusive leadership in your in your article. What is inclusive leadership? What's it look like? What's sort of the goal of it all?
Yeah, and this is like I have to attribute this section to my colleague, Dr. Hughes. She's a big fan of inclusive leadership, which is an amazing theory, and it's fundamentally like a human to human leadership, right? It's leadership that sees the person before the role. In Northhouse leadership theory and practice book, there is a whole chapter about inclusive leadership, but I will outline like three fundamental qualities for inclusive leaders that are very important, and how this is linked to belonging. So first, inclusive leaders, they develop a shared identity among individuals, right? So it's not just you work here, it is you are part of something with us. You are part of the mission, vision of this institution. Second, they decrease the status differences, allowing individuals to be treated with respect. So this means whether you are a new grad, a float pool nurse, or a seasoned charge nurse, you are treated as someone who really matters. Third, they facilitate the participation of everyone to allow for equal voice. So it's not just having an open door policy, it's really actively inviting people in and making sure every voice is heard. So those are really important qualities of inclusive leaders and how they can build belonging, like foster the social connectedness as well. And we do have lots also of evidence supporting and literature to tell us that those qualities create a sense of security at work, develop a safe place for individuals, build a culture where everyone can show up and thrive and flourish as well. And this framework, it really embraces divergent opinions and contributions. So this means there is a place for everyone, a place for the new grads, a place for the quieter personalities, a place for um, agency nurses, let's say, a place for anyone who could fall through the cracks of belonging. So inclusive leaders, they don't wait for people to find their way in. They actively create the conditions where people can belong and where belonging can really happen. So like it puts it also on the organization, not only the individual.
So I definitely see kind of you're a part of this, you matter, you have a voice. I think those all sound really great. What tangible or practical strategies can nurse leaders and educators use to make those things happen?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And this is what we tried to look at in the paper, like from different perspectives. So, for clinical nurses and the new grad, mentorship and peer connection is important. Committee work and shared governance, right? This is where people can make their voices heard. The psychological support, the briefing after stressful events. So, I know, like, for example, at Hopkins, they have health system, they have this RISE event where they bring people together and to debrief after like a stressful event and specific individual recognition. For faculty, it's like the transparent communication from leadership. It's like having their voice in decision making. It's being included in team project. This is how they belong. They belong through formal mentorship programs, through a sense of community, not through a sense of competition. For nurse leaders, it's a little different. It's like encouraging an open conversation culture. It's through building common values around honesty, respect. It's through creating nurse driven traditions and social events. And for students, it's through peer to peer mentorship, through faculty student mentorship. They want this. They want to participate in conferences. This is how they felt they belong to the school. And they want their assignments that make them talk to each other, like they create those opportunities in courses where they can meet and work with their peers. And this came up especially in online program. This is how students like they feel they belong when they have those opportunities to meet with the faculty and to meet with their peer. And, this was very interesting to us. And also, we wrote another paper to talk about caring in online nursing education because students who are and learning online, and we know we do have many now programs, nursing programs, they want to belong. They want to have those connections, but it looks different from the in-person program.
So I just about a year ago finished up online DMP program, and I can totally relate to that. We don't always look forward to the scheduling and all of that come with assignments where we have to work with others, in an online program. But I do think it definitely makes a huge difference when it comes to kind of that sense of belonging, or even having friends that I'm going to school with that, I can now have somebody that I can call up and say, hey, what are you thinking on this assignment? Or how did you interpret what they said about this? Building in opportunities, I think, within an academic program to develop those relationships really do help with that belonging piece. But I want to go back to something you said about the sort of clinical nurse and how we can begin to help them develop this shared identity, feel like they matter, facilitate kind of their voice. And you talked about peer support and mentorship, which I think, again, are big parts of residency and fellowship programs for that transition period. But also you talked about committee work, getting them involved, and shared governance, that type of thing. That's something that I get a lot of questions about. So in our residency program, we require that they complete what we call a professional experience. And this professional experience gets them engaged in some form of change, whether that's by getting involved in a committee, whether that's, thinking up things that we think need to happen and proposing it to a committee, or, just tackling a change or an improvement process that they have recognized and think that the unit, needs to look at. And we get a lot of questions about that because it's a lot of work, right? I mean, it requires both the participant, the leaders of the organization, the facilitators of the program, to kind of take it to that next level. But we feel very confident that this is something that needs to remain in a transition to practice program. And so could you just expound a little bit on kind of that piece of it and how that helps with the social connectedness, with the belonging, with some of these inclusive leadership principles?
Yeah, it's really funny how you brought this point after saying that like a group work is always hard as a student, but it helps you build those relationships. And I often hear like the same comment, but I feel this is essential. Like it's essential to stay in this residency program because it's something expected from us as nurses, whether you work in clinical practice or in academia, to serve on committees and to serve on different task force. It's an expectation. And they should be very grateful that they are having this experience under a safe environment, because they are still under this program. They have a formal mentorship to do this, right? They have they can receive feedback from you and the team. They have this formal, safe, psychological safe environment to do this activity that will prepare them in the future to better lead, better serve in committees, because they will be doing this at some point in their career, and it's sooner than later they will be doing this. What I tell my students, it's an opportunity for you. I know that team group work is not always easy, but we as nurses, we never work alone. We always work in a group, and this is how you are building your leadership skills. Like, if you cannot manage group assignment, how can you manage a group or 100 nurses if you are a nurse manager? Because mainly I teach nurse leaders. So I feel, and I tell them, this is the right time to do this. This is when you can make mistakes and you can get feedback to grow. Growth doesn't come without pain, right? Or without discomfort, let's say discomfort. And this is the right time to do it, because they have to do it later. and they will be on their own. And we all know that often we don't have those formal mentorship, right? Relationship. We wish we have, but we don't. So this is the right time for them to do it, even if it's extra work. They should see it as an opportunity, not like a challenge and opportunity, but not a problem.
And I agree with that. That's really my sort of soapbox that I get on from time to time is this is a learning experience. It's an opportunity to have exposure to this type of work, like you said, in a safe environment. Um, I think what sometimes holds people up is they think it has to be like this earth-shattering improvement that we totally like make huge strides in the workplace. And, I always go back to it's actually better if it's small. We want them to be successful. We want them to feel like this is something they can do and that they want to continue to do. And when we bite off something too large for a new grad in this sort of situation, it can kind of do a little bit more harm than good. And it's really hard, I think, concept to kind of wrap our heads around sometimes because we always want to take it to, the 110% a lot of times. We might grumble about it in the beginning, but then as we get into it, we want to solve all the world's problems. And so scaling it back sometimes is the hardest part. But I do strongly believe that not only is it important to teach the skills of change and how we bring about change within our organizations, but also develop those relationships because every single professional experience, like you said, requires that you're interacting and engaging with new people. And a lot of times for a new nurse, they've never met some of these people before. Like they don't know what these people in the quality department do, or they don't know who to talk to get the data that they need for this professional experience. And so it's about so much more than just engaging in a change, right? Or engaging in a project or experience. It's about everything that they do along kind of the way. And just like your example with, students and student projects, we learn to work together, we form those relationships.
Yeah, scaling it down to something manageable is also important so you can set them up to success, as you said. Also enhance their confidence and right their self-efficacy that they can do this. So this is on us as faculty or as like director of the program, but then on them is to build those relationships, to reach out to people, to know who to ask and when to ask, and to do it in a safe environment, to think about it like a role play, because this is what you will be doing later on. And like for me, I feel like the important part is the reflection on it. This is when I see students really growing, because in practice, you rarely have the time to pause and reflect on your performance. But when you are like in those environments, like whether in school or like in the residency program, so if they get the moment to reflect on their own performance, on their own areas for improvement, their own growth. This is where I feel like, and I receive feedback from students, this is important for their own growth and the lessons they learned and how they were able to apply it in real world scenarios.
So we've talked about things that can help foster the sense of belonging. Let's talk about the flip side for a minute. Is there anything that as leaders or educators we do maybe unintentionally that can undermine the sense of belonging?
I want to say, like, not only as a faculty, right, but mainly maybe at an organization or program, like the structural conditions, right, that can lead to diminishing belonging or not creating a favorite environment for social connectedness. So, for instance, like heavy workloads, staffing patterns, all this can make conversation sometimes a luxury, right? Like you don't intentionally create time for those connections to happen. Or like if you are busy, and I notice this even in my emails, if I'm very busy, like I just write one or two sentences, just like on point. and I don't take the time 1 or 2 minutes to build the connection with the person on the other end. We work also under a stressful environment, and the stress can cause incivility, right? I was just listening the other day to Christine Porat. She worked a lot on incivility, and she was saying that her research consistently shows that stress is the number one drive of incivility. And we all know that as nurses, we work under stressful environment. And sometimes when we are overwhelmed, we don't take the time to connect with people, right? We are more like we'll be performance driven, outcome driven. We want to finish tasks and check boxes. So it's not like I don't want to say like one faculty doing something wrong or one person. It's more like the organization. But I feel like this is something we can tackle. Like we can intentionally build time for those connections. When for one of my studies, I interviewed nurse managers to look at social support and the impact on their leadership behaviors. A common thing that they all shared is that they want those social events to be a priority in the organization because they felt this is how they grow in knowledge, not only like the connection, because this is when they can talk to the other nurse manager and know more about what they're doing. This is how they can impact their own nurses. So I feel like the organization has a huge role in creating those opportunities where nurses can connect and nurses can feel the belonging as well.
I really like that you point out that, sometimes undermining belonging isn't an individual thing, right? It's not something that one person does, but it's really sometimes how our system is built. And as you're kind of talking about, heavy staffing, stress, some of these things, one of the things that came to mind for me was kind of the difference between how we look at productive and non-productive time, right? So productive time, we pay, we support, we're constantly asking nurses to give us productive time. But this idea of non-productive time, so education, unit councils, that is really where belonging comes from. Yet we're very hesitant, or our system is set up to not always support that at the same level. But it's just as important, if not more important, than the productive time. Or if we want better productive time, we need to invest in the non-productive time.
Right, that's a great point. How can we together, like maybe change the language, right? Because the language matters and it makes a difference, right? Imagine saying social connectedness is non-productive time, but we all know and see like the evidence showing that let's say loneliness impact on a high blood pressure, on a mental health, on even like death, like right. So we need to bring the science in. We need to, and I had a point here that I wanted to talk about. What if we make belonging as a measured outcome, same as retention rates or safety metrics, right? What if we do this? Because when I was doing this work, I saw that there are many tools out there. So the science is there. There are many tools to measure belonging at work. Like I saw belongingness scale for clinical placement, the sense of belonging instrument, and believe it like or not, it has been used in nursing research since 1990s. So it's not like very new, right? So what if we make a belonging as a metric and we measure it and we see the science behind it and its impact, right? So I feel like this is what's missing. It's the will to take or make belonging as an outcome we hold ourselves accountable to, like we do for retention or like for falls or for patient satisfaction. So in other words, like we design for belonging, not just hope for it.
And that just reminds me of something that I was writing yesterday about retention. When we start designing for the metric, like our focus, I don't know what the saying is. Something like when a metric becomes our target, it becomes a bad sort of metric. So I think sometimes we're designing everything for retention. We're so focused on retention and that we lose sight of some of these important things that actually make the conditions for retention possible. And I do think one of those key things is belonging. So I'm with you. I would love to see more of us measuring sort of that belongingness at work. And I think it's so great that, as you said, this has been around for a while. These tools have been around for a while. They're there. We just need to get organizations using them. Well, I have had a great conversation with you about this idea of social connectedness, of belonging, the importance of this in, nurse engagement and retention. Looking ahead, what gives you hope about nursing and how we might do this better in the future?
So what gives me hope is the nursing profession itself, right? We've been named for years and years as the number one trusted profession in the US. We are doing amazing things in every corner of healthcare, of education. I feel like what's missing is to bring this caring to the peer-to-peer interaction and to really to the not only to the life of the patients, but to the people around us. If we extend the kindness and trust we give patients to our colleagues, belonging stops being aspirational and it starts being embedded in the organization, embedded in our everyday practice. And as I said before, we need to keep studying this, keep studying the impact of belonging to make it part of the organization.
I have a last question. If there's one strategy that you've seen really work well in organizations that you think makes a huge difference when it comes to social connectedness, belonging, and something that you wish more organizations would adopt, what would that be?
I think the intention of creating those opportunities where like people can connect, like it should be within the institution. I feel like at the organization level, this is the most important strategy. First, to understand the importance of social connectedness and belonging and not to treat it as like non-productive strategy, but also to intentionally create the opportunities for people to thrive and to connect and to feel that they belong, because this is how people can make great things, innovate, and move forward with the mission of the organization.
That is so good. I think that is a great place to wrap up this episode of the Beyond Nurse Residency podcast. Again, I'm so grateful for you being here today and sharing all your expertise and wisdom on this topic. And I look forward to, continuing this conversation and seeing what more, research and information is out there around belonging and social connectedness and the importance in our nursing profession.
Thank you for having me.
Wait, before you go, I want to make sure you know all about our suite of resources you can use to support your new graduate nurses. This includes our Academy, a coaching program designed for organizations as they prepare for the implementation and ongoing sustainability of a nurse residency program. Work one-on-one with residency program experts to make sure your organization is residency ready. Our Clinician Wellbeing course is an asynchronous online course that aims to enhance the well-being and resiliency of healthcare professionals, equipping them with the necessary psychological capital to navigate challenges inside and outside of work. Supporting Nurses is another asynchronous online course for preceptors, mentors, and coaches to learn the skills they need to support any new hire. Both of these offerings can be used as a standalone professional development opportunity or to augment any nurse residency program. And we can't forget about the program that started it all, the online nurse residency program. This includes a comprehensive curriculum designed to support new graduate nurses applying all the knowledge they learned in school to their practice. We focus on professional skills, personal well-being competencies, and new graduate nurses even get the opportunity to create real change in their own organization. Offered completely online and in a blended format, this program is highly adaptable to all clinical practice settings. You can learn more about all of these programs and more of what we offer using the links in the show notes below.